Hello, everybody. Welcome to another ArtistWorks Spotlight Show. We are coming to you live today, and this week we're featuring our amazing ArtistWorks jazz saxophone instructor, Eric Marienthal. Now, this ArtistWorks Spotlight series, we've been posting miniature lessons throughout the week on our YouTube channel. Eric's topic for the week is essential techniques for jazz saxophone mastery. So taking a look at a lot of different aspects on how to improve your playing. The mini topics that he hit this week so far were producing a good sound, how to practice, practicing articulation, melody during improvisation, and playing high notes. And so now Eric is joining us to go deeper and give a little masterclass here for you. We're going to be taking questions later on in the show, so please just drop them in the comments if you have any questions for Eric. And also let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love to hear where people are viewing from. So without further ado, let's bring on Eric.
Hey, Marcus, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. Coming to you from a little south of Los Angeles here. I live in Newport Beach, California. Not terribly hot quite yet, but it's going to get there eventually. Cool.
Take over here. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, very cool. Thanks, Marcus. Well, hi, everybody. How's it going? Yeah, as Marcus mentioned, I am going to hit on some topics that I like to talk about quite a lot in my school and you know, the various lessons that I have in the curriculum. I have gosh, well over a couple hundred lessons actually, both or rather in the basic category and an intermediate category and an advanced category, and we have lots of independent licks called the licks of the week, and also exercises of the week that we did that I posted quite a few of, I think 45 or 46 of each in there too, so there's a lot of material. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to do some talking, I'm going to do some playing right now for a little bit, and then Marcus is going to field your questions. So if you have any questions that you want to write in, Marcus is going to take care of that and shoot those to me. So let me fire this up and see if you like how this is sounding. Cool, so I'm going to play a little something just so you hear this with a track. This is from a record of mine from quite some time ago. It's compared to what Great Les McCann tune. So, and to that, so you can see my horn a little bit better. You probably want to see me less than you want to see the horn. Okay, and I'm going to back up actually, so I can, that might make it a little easier as well. Boom, there we go. Okay, here we go. This is compared to what? All right, awesome. Very cool. It's fun to it's fun. This reminds me of you know, that period of time that was going on for about 4 years, a couple of years ago. Fortunately, we're past all that, but I would do quite a few of these kinds of things, where instead of us being able to go to the audience would come to us, and not only, you know, workshops like this, but concerts too. Cool. So let's see. I do want to hit on the points that I talked about during the little mini lessons that were posted during this week. And for those of you who checked those out, I really appreciate it. I hope they were helpful. The idea was to sort of, you know, give you an idea of what I go to much more in depth with during the course of the lessons and the VEs through ArtistWorks. But what can I mean, the main thing actually is, oh, forgive me, let me turn, I thought I had bailed on my email, but I did not. Let me turn that off right now. There we go, so we don't hear a bunch of reminders, and I don't get distracted by all the emails I get. So one of the main things I like to talk about is sound. You know, we don't really have anything in our playing unless we sound good, unless we have a sound that is, you know, what we're proud of. The interesting thing about playing and our sound is that I think everybody is sort of is going to end up with their sound. And I think every sound that anybody has naturally is going to be good. I think it only happens, and this from the first day we played to the you know, day whatever of your 50th year. I've been playing for a lot longer even than that, I'm afraid to say. But it's only the things that we do that inhibit our natural sound that we want to make sure we're not doing. So in a sense, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that we should not do as opposed to what we should do. For those folks who are, I know my buddy Roger is one of the original students here. He's heard me say this 5,000 times. But it's true, you know, the air is what's important when we play. Making sure that we're not impeding the air going through the horn, making sure that we're putting our air you know, forward. And with regards to the embouchure, you know, making sure that we're not using too much pressure so that we're, you know, limiting the vibration of the reed. So that's what it's all about, you know, between the air and the air being the good guy, the embouchure being the bad guy. The air is allowing the reed to vibrate. And the embouchure, though we need some pressure here to set up the reed so that it plays correctly, the embouchure is doing everything it can to limit the amount of vibration that happens on the reed. So it's a matter of making sure that we go through that. So, so let me play a little. So as I'm playing, I'm thinking about projecting the air forward. Another really important point is that oftentimes when we first start playing, you know, the sound always sounds the best because it's the initial point where you articulate the note and bam, the sound comes out of the gate. But once the initial sound is established, then all we are left to hear is the sound just being supported by the air. So very often we propel the air at the beginning, propel the sound at the beginning with the air, and then for whatever reason we tend to back off the air, and you know, we tend to go boo, boo, as opposed to boo, and keep that air moving forward. So all we have to think about is just simply continuing that airflow, right? And in my, where is it? I think towards the earlier part of the intermediate curriculum, kind of one of those lessons that would work for anybody, but I just had to place it somewhere, so we put it kind of in the middle of the whole school. But the idea of long tones, making sure that your air is moving forward. The long tones are such being each long tone, each note is being played long enough so that you are, feeling the air moving forward. You're pushing your air forward as you go, and not allowing that air support to stop until the note stops. I'm going to talk about this when I talk more about practicing, but it really is about being your own audience and really paying attention to what you're doing. I talk a lot about, and I've heard from people who I've learned this from, where we get, and it's an obvious thing that we just, it's common sense that we don't always think about, where we want to always listen to and hear the end result of what we're doing, hear what we actually sound like. So we're being distracted by so many technical things that we have to do in order to play that we forget to pay attention to, the final result. So just continue to listen to that. And as you listen to your sound, make sure you're supporting, make sure you're not biting too hard. In my curriculum, there's a lesson at the very last lesson of the intermediate curriculum is called Producing a Great Sound. And I go into depth as far as, how to create the right amount of pressure for your embouchure, the right position of your throat, and also just how to set up your diaphragm, what to feel for in your diaphragm, moving that air forward. While on that subject, making sure that you're supporting the air as you're playing quieter. The inflections, a little vibrato, little scoop, little bend. We want to be really economical with those things, first of all. And if we're not putting the air forward so that we're hearing the sound to the very end of the note, that's where the juiciest, most emotional part of the playing happens, when you put a little bit of vibrato at the end of a note, that's where the money comes from. If we're not following through with the air to the end of the note and following through, it's actually a good idea to, when you're playing long tones, to change the dynamic. Very commonly, we'll start, very quiet, pianissimo, and bring it up to forte, and then bring it back down, for that very reason. I don't talk about that as much as I should, probably, because I'm more interested in just making sure that we're moving just about the air. And then, but, what determines the volume is how fast we put that air through the horn, the rate of the horn. Not the amount of the air, but the rate of the air. And so, but having control of the rate of that air, making sure that our sound is nice and full, no matter what dynamic we're playing, is going to allow us to bring in some of those real emotional, subtle, yet extra emotional aspects to our playing. That's really important, and that is not audible unless we keep that air moving forward. Let's touch on some practicing too. Just practicing technique. In the little lesson that I talked about, that was posted earlier in the week, I use the old phrase, it's more important, how we practice than what we actually practice. The technique of actually practicing. And, there's all kinds of different things we can use that are going to be beneficial in terms of exercises and scales and etudes and whatnot. But how you go about, doing that practice. One thing that's very, very important is to make sure that when we're practicing, we're actually performing, we're actually playing, we're actually making music. So when you play a scale, So forth, that you're paying attention to what it sounds like. I wouldn't go as far as to like bring my wife out here to the studio and make her listen to me so I'm actually performing to somebody. I wouldn't torture her like that, but think of that. Think of the fact that when you're practicing, even when you're trying to read, you know, that you're playing for somebody, that you're performing. And when we do that, we tend to play better, and we tend to not think about, we're not just going through the motions. It's not just a mechanical thing, because we're practicing to improve our technique, but we're also practicing performing. You know, the great James Morrison from Australia, you know, Mr. Jazz of Australia, is an amazing musician who plays every instrument, always talks about that. We talk about practicing. He says, you know, I never practice. I always perform. And that's we haven't got enough time to talk about all the things I've learned from James, but that's so important, you know, making sure that we're always sounding good. You know, never allow yourself not to sound good. And so, and also the massive importance of practicing with a metronome. I really feel that it is, you could honestly say that whenever you're practicing anything that involves tempo, that you may be doing yourself more harm than good by not practicing with a metronome. It's one thing to play a scale or a melody or an etude or anything that is meant to be played in time. And, you know, if you play it without the metronome or without some sort of time source to relate to, then you're not entirely sure if you're playing it right in time, and you're not really training yourself to really have control as to when exactly a certain note is played. And that goes for your articulation as well. You know, when we articulate, it's a matter of, and when we practice our articulation, it's a matter of the coordination between your fingers and your air and the tongue. You know, the articulation. So more directly, your fingers with your tongue. So if you were playing. So just there, I played a G major scale in 3 different articulations. And so, you know, having that independence is really important. But if you this is going to be very low tech, but I'm going to turn on my metronome here, and I'm going to leave this mic on so you can hear this a bit better. But check this out. So as we're practicing, as we're playing rather. So often I get videos back from people who are playing with their metronomes, and without even being aware, they're either a little off or they're on top. I think it's human nature. It's rare that we practice with a metronome and we're behind, unless it's where you're trying to practice something very fast and just not able to keep up. So really internalizing the tempo of the metronome. In fact, it's great to practice multitasking like that, where you're not just paying attention to what you're doing, but you're paying attention to what another source, you know. It's like when you play in a band, you know, you're listening, you're playing, but you're also listening to the drummer, the bass player, or, you know, and coordinating with them. Now, you know, same thing applies to intonation. You know, you're paying attention to you, but you're also paying attention to whomever you're trying to play in tune with, especially if you're playing in a section, in a big band section. You know, I play in Gordon Gibbon's Big Fat Band, and that's a band of, you know, we do a lot of studio dates, some as a band actually, did The Incredibles and things, but a lot of the players in that band, we see each other a lot on different films, and the intonation is just so key, and talk about multitasking and, just being aware of not only the time. Whenever you do a film like that, you're listening to the click. It's a metronome, basically. And so you're having to listen to that. You're having to listen to the people around you, making sure you're spot on in tune. And that requires, a multitude of areas to be, to concentrate into. So, so making sure that you're practicing, with the metronome. And I get way more into this in the school, but we're just trying to hit on a couple topics before I run out of time, and I want you to be able to answer some of your questions. But the other thing is, and I touched on this, I guess, is that, never allow yourself to get to the point where you're straining, or it sounds like you're straining. Take breaks when you need to. Don't take long breaks, but take enough of a break. It's like you're at the gym and you're doing your weights and do your rep of 12 and you put the weight down. You don't want to hop on the phone or write 25 texts or get on Instagram. You want to let the blood get back into the chops and then get back to it. But we never want to practice sounding strained. Just like I said, you don't want to practice sounding bad. You always want to sound good. Being strained because you're just, fighting it. I do this exercise, a lot of you know, this chromatic exercise. So I do it slower. I do it with a metronome. I start way down low, and it takes about 20 minutes to get through the whole thing. Start at the very bottom of the horn, do each one twice, and go to the very top of the horn, and then reverse and start heading down. And the whole point is for it to be a strain on my embouchure. And so, but when I start hearing, it's one thing to feel like you're getting a little bit fatigued. That's okay, as long as it's not audible. If it becomes audible, take a break, and again, don't allow yourself to sound anything but your optimum best. So, okay, and then as far as articulation is concerned too, just real briefly, it's not brief in my curriculum at all. This is a major thing, but when it comes to the pressure of your tongue, less is more. Like anything else, that I always like to keep my fingers close to the keys when I play. So it's a lot easier, a lot more efficient to do that than it is to do that. Not that there aren't some great players out there whose fingers tend to move a little bit more than I would have thought would be possible. But man, when I was young, I got to hear Phil Woods live one time, and then consequently I actually got to play with him quite a bit, actually. But talk about someone who had unbelievable finger, economy of motion. It was just amazing. You could barely even tell that he was playing if you just look at his fingers. And so same thing with the articulation, making sure that, I always think of when I articulate that I'm using the tip of my tongue or just above the tip of the tongue and hitting just below the tip of the reed. And just making sure that as I'm articulating, I'm retracting my tongue, so to speak, far enough away from the reed so that the tongue is not interrupting the air into the reed. And oddly, even if your tongue is not touching the reed, if it's floating kind of nearby, it's affecting the flow of the air. But conversely, if your tongue is too far away, then you have the same concept, negative concept as far as the distance you're having to travel. Same thing with the fingers, So it's a matter of figuring out what the proper amount of, what would you call that, tongue retraction as we're playing. So as I'm really thinking about it, I'm definitely on the top part of my reed, and it just depends on how fast I'm tonguing. If I'm just, staccato tonguing, I'm using more tip to tip. So there's not a big, I mean, I'm not thinking, now I'm staccatoing, so I'm changing my tongue position. Now I'm playing more of a legato tongue, and that's changing as well. It's very subconscious, but you just want to make sure that it, in the lessons we get way more into it, like I said, but you just want to make sure that you're using enough pressure with the tongue against the reed so that the desired effect of the articulation comes across, but only that much pressure, and not so much. Like anything else, the more effort we put into something, the slower it is, the more difficult it is. So using enough pressure, but only as much as you need. And then, making sure, probably one of the most important things articulation-wise is when we play a legato articulation, right, that the interruption of the note is as slight as possible, right? Meaning that when you articulate like a jazz phrase, it still has to sound smooth. You don't want it to sound like this. Right? You're doing the jazz tonguing of the upbeats, but the tongue is lingering on the reed so long, it's taking so long for the action of the tongue to do its thing that you have these big gaps, as opposed to so it's articulated, but still connected, still smooth. So we'll talk about that. Improvisation is another, the fourth of the little mini lesson I filmed this week, and it's hard in 30 seconds to really talk about the mechanics of improvisation. What is incredibly important that is able to be said in a short amount of time is just that when you're improvising, just remember that it's like the same as spontaneous composition, spontaneous writing. You're still writing, you're still you're still composing. It's just that you're doing it spontaneously. And so, I was in Chick Corea's band for 35 years, for goodness sakes. And one of the most amazing things about Chick was that in all those years, it never seemed like any solo that he played ever, and this is absolutely true, sounded like something he could have spent a month writing and then performing what he had written. It was just that seemingly well thought out, even though that on a month-long tour, on a 2-month-long tour, you listen to him play, and every solo was unique. We all have our certain things that we might go to, but in his case, he was just incredibly fresh. It was so inspiring, man. But so fresh every night, and it wasn't that I didn't talk to him about that 5,000 times over all those years, but what I gathered was that it's just really a matter of being really committed with your concentration, really concentrating on what you're about to play. Don't ever allow yourself to play something that you haven't given forethought to. It might be a split second of forethought, but forethought nonetheless. Just don't play anything that you don't intend. That's incredibly important. Yes, you need to know your chord scales. You need to know that on a C dominant 7 chord that it's the same chord scale as a C major scale, except the dominant scale means that the 7th is flatted, or on a minor 7th chord that the 3rd and the 7th are flatted, or the major 7th chord where all the notes are the same as a major scale. In my curriculum we talk a lot about that, and I talk a lot about the different songs and things, but if there's one main thing, it's just to really, you know, really pay attention to what you're doing and never allow, if you never like seriously allow anything to come out of your horn that you don't intend, then your accuracy, not only will your solos sound a hell of a lot better, but your accuracy, your playing ability just goes up, you know, just incredibly noticeably, because mistakes happen when we don't pay attention. We're not going to intentionally play a wrong note. We're not intentionally going to, you know, miss an accidental when we're reading and all those kinds of things. So, and then before, I'm going to let some questions come through here in a second. But lastly, I talked about the altissimo range of the horn, only because that often becomes it's a very oftenly asked question. And the point to playing those notes what we have to make sure we're paying attention to is the sound of those notes. You know, anybody can, you know, bite down on a reed and have screeches come out of their horn and say, hey, how cool, I'm playing high notes, you know. It's not going to do anybody any good, and arguably do a lot of people a lot of harm, especially the people that are listening to that. But making sure that the quality of the sound of those notes really comes out. In my curriculum, I talk a lot about I go through the fingerings and various you know, fingerings that I use. There's a lot of different possibilities of just about all those notes, actually. And so the fingerings are one thing, but making sure that we're not approaching those notes like a trumpet player, like a brass player. You know, on a brass instrument, the more pressure you use on the embouchure, the higher the note goes. And so that's why, you know, especially lead trumpet players have a shelf life each day as to how much they can play. You know, a lot of buddies who are lead trumpet players who have to be really, not just lead players actually, have to be really careful about, you know, rehearsing and performing on the same day, because they're, you know, you got chop issues to deal with. With us, fortunately, saxophone players, we get to a certain strength and then we have to let go. We have to allow that reed to vibrate. Remember that high notes are just overtones, and so if we are clamping down too much on the reed, we're limiting those good sounding notes to come across. So making sure that you're open here and making sure you're open on the throat. In the sound lessons, and in that one lesson in my curriculum called Producing a Great Sound, I talk about a lot of things, including the throat, and the throat has to be open. It's true for your sound in general. Open just means that you're saying ah, not saying it, but the same position as if you're saying ah. You're warming up your hands, you're speaking in a low voice, you're yawning, you're singing a low note, any of those comparisons. And so when I go for a high G and I don't think about my throat and it's just in a closed position, more of an E rather than an ah. I'm looking at myself in the camera and I can see my throat down here kind of open and close and open and close. Ah, E, ah, E, ah. And so when it's closed, the note doesn't come out. When it comes, so what I just did there was to change nothing except the position of my throat. And so by opening the throat, I don't know what it is, to be perfectly honest. It might open the cavity of air so that more air is hitting the reed. It might just create a larger chamber. It definitely just put the tongue in a little bit more of a recessed position. Maybe all those things contribute. I just know that when you open your throat, those notes come out much more easily. That's what is important, right? And then that last little barking thing, I like to refer to it as a money note. You know, when you take a note and split the sound like that. You know, for me, all that really is a little bit more pressure on the heart of the reed. You don't want to change where your lip actually is on the reed, but you kind of aim the air more down towards the heart of the reed. I tend to angle the horn a little bit more like that. I mean, not really. Whoops. Not really. I mean, I tend to maybe it's the third thing I was going to mention is just to use more air, just blow harder. And so by doing that, it might just be a natural thing just to bring your jaw forward, which changes the angle to the mouthpiece a bit. You be the judge. Good. All right. So there's some tips on all those topics. The lessons in my curriculum go way past those. Originally when we put the school together, when I put it together, I spent a year on the curriculum. I literally, I did have this, but I actually went to a library nearby and just like thought and just had a lot of ideas as far as areas that would be beneficial to cover. And then I got back in here and thought about specific lessons, specific exercises, specific songs that people would have fun with, and all kinds of different things. And then kind of been adding curriculum ever since. But yeah. Okay, you've been hearing me blab for a while. I'm going to see if Marcus has any questions.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Eric. Thanks so much for that. And yeah, great examples. Like actually being able to see the right and wrong way really sort of drives it home. Just real quick, so a question just came in that's right on the topic you were just in. So let's start there and then we'll backtrack and hit a bunch of questions. There's some great audience questions here from you folks. So are you growling at all when you split a note?
Mike Potter, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm sorry. Mike Potter is a student of mine here at ArtistWorks, and I just saw Mike at a show. I played a club called Spaghettini, not far away from here at all, and he comes to see me. So Mike, thanks, man. So am I growling? No, I'm really not. Yeah, sometimes you get that that sound by actually making a sound in your throat. I don't do that. One thing I do kind of do is that in the heat of battle, I tend to lose a little bit of, I think maybe years ago I realized, oh man, I've got to get rid of that, tighten up my embouchure a little bit because some air is escaping. And I thought, oh, wait a second, maybe that air escaping is creating the very sound I'm looking for. So check this out. If I just let a little bit of air sort of escape from here. As opposed to. So I'm actually noticing a little air escaping from the top lip. And again, I think it is just originally, and it really is just sort of a natural thing that happens when I'm really, really pushing. And then I ended up hearing it in a recording. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And the good thing is that you don't hear the buzzing sound of the lip from the air escaping, because the mic is much closer to the sound, and when you're playing that way, you're playing much louder. And so, and even if you do hear a little bit of air, it kind of adds to the growling effect. So there you go.
Nice. Cool. So thank you, Roger, for tuning in right from the get-go here. I believe this is one of your students here, Roger Pace.
Hi, Roger.
Yes, playing with your lowest sound voice. How do you do that? Do you have to increase your breath support to pull that off? And secondarily, what is that silver band on your saxophone neck?
The second question first. The silver band is nothing more than a piece of metal duct tape. And I, my mouthpiece is the Eric Marienthal special mouthpiece. May as well mention that. Put out by Retro Revival. Retro Revival is a company with Joel Peskin and Bob Shepard. And I was at Bob's studio not long ago. And he's always doing stuff. He's always looking at my horn saying, try this, try that, And a year or two ago, he had the idea, which now I'm seeing advertising for, much more produced. But this little chunk of metal, all it is a little piece of a music lyre put in the lyre hole of your collar, and by using that, it helped the horn resonate. I can't explain why. Even to the point where the different metals, I tried 5 different metals. And the one I have no idea what I ended up with. I think it looks like it's probably nickel. It looks like. Anyway, that made a difference. And so last time I was at his house, he says, "Hey, Eric, check this out." And he put this piece of tape around my neck, and it's rather unsightly, although it's a nice conversation piece, and it makes a difference. Try it. I just went to the hardware store and got a roll of metal duct tape, silver metal duct tape, because I don't know, aluminum or something, but it made a difference. It seems like one of those weird little placebo kinds of things, but I've tried it. I went back and forth for a week and realized that no, it's not a placebo. It makes a difference. So that's what that is. And after explaining that, I forgot what your first question was, Marcus. What was Roger's first question? I don't see it.
Oh yeah, let me jump back there real quick. Playing with your lowest sound voice, how do you do that? Do you have to increase your breath support to pull that off?
My lowest sound. Oh, you mean just opening? Roger, do you mean as far as your throat is concerned? My lowest. If you mean opening the throat by positioning the throat as if you were speaking in a low voice, then no, it's just a matter of not changing the air support or approaching it any differently than the rest of the horn. If you're talking about literally playing lower notes on the instrument, the extreme ranges of the instrument do require a little extra love, that does allow. When I play down low, I am thinking a little bit extra about, keeping the throat open, a little bit more pressure on the heart of the reed, therefore bringing the tip of the reed closer to the tip of the mouthpiece. That creates kind of a feeling of a softer setup, softer reed. And so those notes tend to speak much more consistently by a little bit, it's a little counterintuitive, isn't it? If you put more pressure on the reed, it's going to be easier to play the low notes. You wouldn't think that, but you're not pushing pressure. You're not putting pressure on the tip of the reed. You're putting pressure more down on the heart of the reed, and so you're still allowing plenty of room on the real vibrating part of the reed to vibrate. So hope one of those answers answers the question you intended.
Very nice. All right, next up, we've got Tom asking for you to talk a little bit more about the concept of muted tonguing, and also if you have any recommendations for neck straps.
Yes, definitely. Tom, thanks, man. As far as muted tonguing is concerned, so the technique of that is is simply putting your tongue on the reed enough so that you hear the effect of the mute without deadening the vibration of the reed entirely, thus creating a muted sound. So I've never really audited people and said, hey, when you mute a note, what part of your tongue is hitting which part of the reed? In my case, if I'm doing what I just did, I'm tending to mute the right side of the reed with the left side of my tongue. I'm left-handed. Does that play into it? I don't know. That's just natural. And so that's a matter of experimenting. When I'm muting a phrase like this, a great exercise to practice muting well, first of all, if you're talking about muting within like a jazz phrase like this, so in that instance, you can really, if you're doing the muted tongue thing well, it really helps you play faster phrases, because when we're muting an articulation, we're actually cheating a little bit, because the note that's muted, you're putting on the reed, and the following note that sounds like an articulated note, a note that you're actually having to reattack, is actually the result of your tongue leaving the reed. So instead of it sounding like you're tonguing twice, you're only tonguing once. So one easy fingering thing to do would be to play the first 5 notes of a B minor scale. And mute the E on the way up to the pinnacle note, the F sharp, and then release on the F sharp. And so that's what I'm doing. The first note of any phrase you always want to articulate. That's up for debate, but that's what I'll say. And then all the notes in a jazz phrase, when you articulate in a jazz phrase, you're articulating the upbeats, right? Ba-do, 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 boo-ba. 1, 2, 3, 4, boo, ba-do, 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 right? But if you want to incorporate, very often you incorporate a mute prior to a target note, prior to a pinnacle note. And so that's why this little lick here works nicely to develop the mute. Tongue, slur, mute, release, slur, tongue, slur, tongue, slur, tongue, slur, mute, release, tongue, slur, tongue, slur. So as opposed to and then once you develop that, man, it's off to the races. It's so much easier. It just, it releases the floodgates. You can play much faster lines with, much less of a feeling of being handcuffed with the articulation. Anybody can move their fingers around, but the coordination of the fingers and the tongue are what we have to get past, or we have to get together rather, in order to, play a nicely articulated phrase. And so anyway, that's what I'm doing on the articulation. Hope that helps you.
Yeah, that's great. And Carl from Queens, New York had some questions about tonguing too. So hopefully I think you pretty much covered that there. Let's go now to Rob, and forgive my ignorance of MPCs. That mouthpiece, would more MPC be exposed if you were playing a tenor MPC, because most of the MPC with the alto is immersed while you were playing?
Yeah, that's right. Very good deduction there. I actually have Retro Revival sent me their True 6 tenor. I've got it here. I'm actually, yeah, I've got a show next week. I'm actually going to play some tenor, and so I'm going to use it. I had it here. So, one second. So, I mean, to answer your question, you might see a little bit more mouthpiece only because you're playing a bigger mouthpiece, and so as far as ratio is concerned, no, I'm not. The thing I've always learned and taught and thought of is that it's all based on where the support of your bottom lip, or where your bottom lip is actually placed on the mouthpiece. And you should look at the mouthpiece, and right at the point where your reed breaks away from the mouthpiece, that's where your bottom lip should be centered in terms of where the support comes from. It's impossible to tell exactly, but you get the idea. And so based on that, it does depend on the mouthpiece and the configuration of the breakaway point with the reed. That determines where you should, place the embouchure. But that's actually, I've always taught and practiced myself that, it's a matter of experimentation and deciding what, you have too much mouthpiece in your mouth and it sounds too out of control, and you have too little if your embouchure is too close to your bottom lip is too close to the tip of the reed, then obviously you're choking off a whole lot of vibration of the reed, and so your sound is going to really sound super duper thin and bad. So anyway, that's but it's a cool horn, isn't it? It's nice and shiny. But I'm digging it. I just started playing it today, as a matter of fact. So
yeah, it's beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Hey, I forgot. Somebody else had a question about the neck strap. I'm using a. It's called a Marmaduke. A friend of mine in Japan laid this on me, and I dig it. There's a lot I like. For a long time, I just used the typical, Ray Hyman or Yamaha strap that just, did not have the separation bar here. And number one, this one has, it takes some of the pressure off of my neck, which is cool. But what's really cool is that by having this here, these sides of the strap don't pinch into your neck, and it's not terribly uncomfortable. Now it is, because I'm so used to this, but that affects your sound. I mean, check this out. Wait. I don't know if it's translating, but it's really noticeable. And so for that reason alone, I made the switch. And then it's especially, playing a heavier instrument like baritone or tenor. For me, it just got really hard on the neck. So this is good. Boston sax also makes a great one. But this configuration with the little separation bar thing, I'm a big fan of now.
Awesome. Great. got a question here from Antonio, just asking about how you might work on your embouchure after not being able to play for some time. So if you've taken a break, like how do you retune your embouchure?
Long tones, man. Long tones, long tones, long tones. It's just about developing your strength again. If I'm the music director for 8 jazz cruises, and so there's a lot of stuff I do a lot of playing, but I also do a lot of organizing. It takes a little time away from the horn, so oftentimes I'll be on my computer and I'll be playing long tones with my horn hanging off my looks pretty weird, but I will do that just to as much as I can. But yeah, I mean, if there's any one thing I can do, if I only have 15 minutes to practice, I'll practice long tones. I mean, that's true. Or long notes, because your fingers will hang in there for a while. But it's if it's been a while since you played, it's going to be this. It gets tired a whole lot faster than this. Yeah, you got to develop your technique and coordination, things we talked about. But if you can stomach 20 minutes worth of long tones every day, you'll get it back. You'll get it back surprisingly quick. That's been true in my case, actually. I never take a long time. It's been a while since I haven't played, at least some every day. But that's, but the times I, occasionally go on vacation with my wife and I don't take my horn, come back, and that's what I want to do for the first couple of days, is really just, get this back together.
Great. Cool. Got one here from Rob. And I think this was, this popped up when you were giving an example early on in this show. He says, it's hard to hear whether you're tonguing at the end of a decrescendo with vibrato, like as you sort of end a note. Can you talk about that a little bit?
If I'm tonguing the note, you mean, Rob, is that right? So. If that's what you're talking about, then no, I'm letting the air do the trick. The tough thing, the thing to work on, it's actually not hard at all. It's very easy, actually. Just getting used to, as the note diminishes, don't allow. There are 2 sources of support: the air and the embouchure, right? So as the air lightens up, as you play quieter, then the support is left more to the devices of the embouchure, and so. So if your embouchure is taking over pressure, then and you have less air to support that note, the sound, then the pitch is going to get really thin and really sharp, because it's the air sort of drives the pitch down, and if you've got just support here, it's going to move up. That's why, incidentally, if you're playing and you feel like you're a little on the high side, a little on the sharp side, you want to push a little bit more, just more air into the horn, not so much that it changes the volume, but just more support, and that will drive the pitch down generally. I mean, we're talking a little bit, but usually actually enough to make the difference. If you're playing in a section and you're hearing that you're a little bit out of tune with your neighbor, just a little bit more support, and it usually locks it in, as long as they're doing the same thing. So no, to answer your question, you certainly can, especially if you want the note to end more abruptly. That's a super great thing to practice too, by the way, is having the note, just pretend you're a light and you're a light switch, and you're going on, off, and the sound should be 100%. You've got your air all the way ready to go, and you let go of the reed with the tongue, and bam, the sound it takes 0 time to develop. It's just on and then off, right? That's super key. When you're reading and you need a note to stop right exactly, when you intended to, that's what you want to use. This weekend, I'm starting to record on the soundtrack of there's a sequel to oh God, what's the movie that Marcus helped me out? It's something gun that Leslie Nielsen was in and OJ was in.
Oh, Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. Thank you. Yeah. There's a sequel, and yeah, and Liam Neeson is taking the lead on this one. So anyway, I bring that up because it's going to be a section, and just those kinds of things, ending exactly at a certain time, starting a note exactly at a certain time. All those kinds of things are just so critical. And the way to do that is with that articulation. To get back to your original question, yeah, if you're ending a note really quietly, then usually allow the ear to do it.
Fantastic. Cool. We've just got a couple more. Yeah, thank you everyone that joined us today, and thanks for these great questions. Thanks, Eric, for taking the time out to get to these. Let me throw this one at you here. So this one's from Jonathan. And he's asking about intonation. I know this is probably a deep topic here, but someone had told him that no saxophone plays perfectly in tune with itself. So how do you make intonation adjustments for troublesome notes? Any quick tips on that?
Yes. You're right. I mean, there are instruments out there that are super in tune, but nothing that's totally perfect. What I just touched on is, the instrument is made to be played with air support. And if we support each note correctly, which is to say enough air, it's like putting the right kind of fuel. You don't want to put unleaded, gas into a Ferrari. You actually, I don't have a Ferrari, so I don't know if they take unleaded gas or not. I'm going to assume that they take premium gas. And so, you've got to put the right kind of fuel into the engine. And so putting enough air into the instrument allows it to, it gives you a fighting chance when it comes to intonation, because you're playing it the way it was designed to be played. Beyond that, and then allowing a reed to get terribly used, I tend to use new reeds just about every day because my intonation improves a lot. My intonation worsens as the reed gets older. I'll put it that way. Is it because the reed weakens? Is it because I don't know what it is, but I just my pitch improves with a newer reed. Not that you've got to change a reed every day. That's not what I'm saying. Just point of fact. But it also, getting in front of a tuner and seeing where the issues are. Typically low D is going to be low. Typically, E, in the middle of the horn, D, E flat, and E tend to be high. So, if you just push a little bit harder and just be aware of that, it brings it down. On the high C sharp, a lot of times that note's a strained. It's a weird note on the horn. It's not really a weird note on the horn, but it feels a little less locked in or natural or whatever. It is a bit of a strain. And so just a little bit more. I find that to be true too. Even if you're a little over, or rather if you're a little under pitch, like that low D, interestingly, just putting a little bit more air into the instrument tends to even it out. Try that, experiment, get in front of a tuner, and wherever you're, first start by tuning your F sharp, your middle F sharp, right? And you get that right. So, your concert A. So F sharp for alto and baritone, and B for tenor and soprano. And then once you know that the horn is in tune, your mouthpiece is in the right place, then experiment with just pushing a little more air forward on notes that appear either high or low. And, darn if you don't notice that it corrects it, again, because you're putting into the horn, not louder necessarily, but just, more supported. And it helps for sure.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, we've gone over an hour, so thanks again so much for your time today, Eric. Just wanted to give you the floor if there's anything to talk about, like what's on the horizon for you, anything to promote, any music or any live stuff coming up people can check you out.
Well, thank you very much. Number one, I am so happy that I've been part of ArtistWorks for all these years. It's just such a great platform. It's so much fun. And now, starting, if I'm not mistaken, next month, we're launching a whole new format to the platform that's going to make it so much user friendly. Not that it's terribly unfriendly at the moment, but it's going to make it so streamlined. And quite honestly, it's going to make it much more streamlined for the instructors too. So, which means that it's going to be a lot easier to get my responses out much more quickly. Yeah, let's see. For me, I'm constantly sort of out there doing it. Like I mentioned, I'm the music director for the David Foster cruise and the Smooth Jazz cruise and the V Jazz cruise and then the Chris Bodie cruise and the Christian McBride cruise and the Journey of Jazz cruise and quite a few. There's a lot of very cool things happening with that. And yeah, our mouthpieces, the Eric Marienthal special by Retro Revival is, I would never play anything that I don't support and I don't play myself. I would never promote anything or put anything out that I don't play. And I'm just so happy with the way our mouthpieces have turned out and just really thrilled. So you can go to retrorevival.com and check these out if you like, because I'm really, really happy with them. And yeah, all kinds of stuff actually, but might be able to find out some info on the website. But I'm very excited about the ArtistWorks upcoming refresh platform, and it's just terrific.
Fantastic. Well, we are so proud to have you as part of the ArtistWorks family. You've been with us for around a decade now. Somebody asked early on in the broadcast how many video exchanges you've done, and at a quick glance, well over 3,000. So there's well over 100 lessons there, fully supported with full notation, play along tracks, and all sorts of great stuff to dig in. You also did your exercise of the week series. So there's like a year's worth of exercise in the week, a year's worth of lick of the week. So much great stuff to chew into. And of course, yeah, thank you so much for just teaching everybody on this video exchange platform. It's fantastic. So for everyone here today, thanks so much for joining us. We do these every other week. We're going to be doing these artist spotlights. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel and stay up to date with the newest things that we're doing. We do a lot of these fun shows and a lot of free content there. In the description for the event, check out Eric's school. If you're not enrolled already, you can check out free sample lessons there or just jump right in and get started today. So once again, Eric, thank you so much. And
my pleasure. Thank you very much for putting it all together, Marcus. You're the the driving force. You're a very important part of the ArtistWorks team. So thank you for being so incredible.
Right on. Thanks. Take care, everyone. See you next time.